everybody, Jim here. Welcome back for another edition of SHOREVIEWKEN, where today we are taking a look at an awesome 8-bit platformer. It's called Shatterhand, and we have a very special guest reviewer today. So everyone, give a nice warm welcome to Brazzle the Gamer.
Do you enjoy punching bad guys and robots and walls? Were you an angsty teenager like me? I got in trouble for punching my locker in high school once and had to pay to fix it. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Shatterhand! And not what happened when I punched my locker. The badass NES game that people constantly call a hidden gem. And man, it really was a hidden gem. It's a great game, and I honestly had never heard of it until I started collecting. Today I'll be talking about this game because Kid SHOREVIEWKEN from Mad Panic Gaming asked me to contribute to his channel, and I was more than glad to accept. Shatterhand was developed by Natsume and published by Jaleco in '91. So it was a late NES game with kind of silly box art, so it's no question as to why it wasn't more popular back when it was released. But had I seen this game in person as a kid, I would definitely have wanted a copy. Look at these graphics. This has to be one of the best looking games on the NES. The backgrounds are incredibly detailed with some really cool parallax scrolling effects. And even the enemies are detailed and colorful. Most games don't go into this much color detail on enemies. Like, the developers at Natsume went an extra mile here. The music is awesome too, really hard driving and catchy. It may not be like Castlevania or Mega Man levels of memorable, but it's still really good. And the sound effects work so well here. The main character's punches sound like they have so much weight. So the game is set up in a manner similar to a Mega Man game. There's an intro level, 5 main levels that you can choose the order to take them on, and a final level containing the end boss. It's definitely not as big as a Mega Man game, but the challenge is about the same. Shatterhand isn't NES hard in the way Ninja Gaiden or Contra is. It has a pretty fair challenge, and with unlimited continues, it gives you a lot of chances to figure out enemy patterns and power-up locations. The only real detriment to a game over is needing to start a level over at the beginning, which isn't a huge deal because these levels aren't massive by any means. Outside of punching everything in sight, you also have to collect these little icons that you can punch that will change between an alpha and a beta character. After picking 3 of these icons up, you'll get a little robot helper buddy that will have a different weapon based on the combination of alphas and betas you collected. Collect the same combination a second time while your robot is active, and you'll get a mech suit for 15 seconds that gives you invulnerability and a large fireball that rips enemies to shreds. It's very useful for boss fights if you can time your collection of power-ups just right. The boss fights are all very pattern-based and may take some time to figure out and beat. Some are vastly easier than others. This guy who sticks to the wall and jumps back and forth is super easy to beat once you figure out you can hang on the chain wall under him and punch the crap out of him a few times before he jumps to the other side. The samurai robot-looking thing, on the other hand, had a pretty predictable pattern, but his attacks can be super hard to dodge. I had to get the mech suit to take him out. Your character cuts a pretty quick pace, and the controls are mostly really tight. There are a few areas here where his jump feels a little floaty, and you may not jump exactly where you need to, but it's forgivable, and you mostly do get used to it. As for the story, I don't have a manual for this game, and there is no dialogue in the cutscenes in-game, so beats me what's actually going on. But for a game like this, what does it matter? I know that in Japan, this game was based off some pre-existing IP, so it's essentially a really good licensed game. The last level does have quite the difficulty spike because you have to make it through several of the previous bosses before taking on the final boss. And checkpoints are few and far between. But there are numerous health pickups in this level, so if you can get to that next health pickup each time, you'll have an easier go of it. Admittedly, I still haven't beaten Shatterhand. I need to really put some time into that last level, but I still have a blast every time I play it. Shatterhand is a great game that absolutely deserved the hidden gem title it got years ago. It's pricier these days and more well known. It's not really a hidden gem now because so many people know about it, but it doesn't matter. It's a cool game one way or the other. whether you've heard of it or not. You probably want to hit it up on emulation instead of trying to get a physical copy because, again, it's pricey as hell. But still, definitely check it out. I want to thank Mad Panic Gaming for having me on. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Later.
Big time thank you and shout out to Brazzle the Gamer for joining me today and for picking not only an amazing game for this review, but also a game that, once again, I'd never played before. As Brazzle said, this was a late NES release and was mostly overlooked at the time, and by the time I became interested in game collecting, it was already a quote-unquote hidden gem and kind of hard to come by. Not to mention expensive. If you were hoping that maybe the Famicom version was a more affordable option, think again, because even in Japan, this is a pricey and elusive game. On that note, Brazzle was right about something else. In Japan, this game is referred to as Tokyu Shurei Soul Brain, and it is indeed a licensed game based on a fairly short-lived TV series of the same name that featured costume superheroes defending Japan from a variety of monsters and sinister villains, very similar to something like Power Rangers and other Super Sentai series. So the Famicom game has some graphical differences from its NES counterpart, but other than that, it's the same game, and what a game it is. Despite never having played this game before, it quickly became one of my new favorite Famicom action platformers, right up there with classics like Batman, Gun Deck, and Ninja Ryukenden 3. This is, like any good side-scroller should be, simple, challenging, and fun. The premise is very easy to grasp. Just beat the hell out of everything that stands in front of you, collect power-ups, and take out a boss to complete the stage. The controls are tight and responsive, the challenge is fair, and the inclusion of the variable power-up system is enough to help the gameplay stand out and add a little extra depth without overcomplicating things. Simply put, this is an excellent game that'll be enjoyable for anyone with a love for its 8-bit peers. On top of that, this is indeed one of the best looking Famicom games I've ever played, with some very vibrant and detailed backgrounds and some pretty cool cutscenes as well that definitely bring to mind games like Ninja Gaiden and Vice Project Doom. And it must be said that this is an excellent soundtrack that reminded me of why I like chiptunes in the first place, which isn't surprising since this game was developed by Natsume, and if nothing else, their games always featured great music. So whether it's Shatterhand or Soul Brain, this game is awesome, and I highly recommend it to retro gamers with a love for action platformers. Thank you again to Brazzle the Gamer for joining me today. He has an excellent channel with some especially good retro game reviews. Go and check it out for more great gaming content, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on SHOREVIEWKEN.